Science Fiction Weekly. Short story number 3. The Galaxies. Driving Force. Short read series. By Neil A. Hogan. Published by Maldek House. Copyright 2017. www.sciencefictionweekly.com. The Galaxies Driving Force. By Neil A. Hogan. Aligvel reluctantly plunged his tentacles into the deep holes of the spongy console, knowing the pain was unavoidable. He cried out as his sucker muscles opened, motor neurons grew, twisted, and screwed through his skin, connecting to the dendrites and axons of the organic control system. The drive energy began circling his cephalopod bulk, and the pain became bearable as his senses expanded, shifting from his single-body existence to the planet's all-encompassing one. He explored, sensing a volcano in his stomach, a new quake occurring on top of his head, and solar winds burning his skin, as he slashed the planet sped around the star. As his consciousness finished its expansion and merged with everything down to the spinning planetary core, the drive controls finally became accessible within his mind. Access confirmed, he stated for the AI. His mother shell's AI began the next step. Exotic matter instigated. Negative space confirmed. Wormhole transverse bridge active. Launch window, open. Aligvel pushed his tentacles deeper, and the newly finished engine fired several volcanoes, converted the core's electromagnetic energy into thrust, then propelled the planet out of the elliptic. Adjusting course, he headed for the transmission point. He would take this planet to a new star, one that wasn't about to go supernova. He didn't really have that much to do when it came to planet moving. Fly there in the mother shell, survey, choose the best place for the drive, take his pod down to set up the bots to build the drive, return when it was complete and move the planet. Simple work, really. He had several hundred worlds at various stages, and he'd been moving planets for at least a galactic orbit. Of course, this kind of job took eons of relative time, so he was regularly dealing with the descendants of the people he was going to save. Sometimes they had made him into a religious figure. Sometimes they wanted to kill him, not remembering why the tentacled alien wanted to change the stars. Sometimes they had already perished in some natural or not so natural disaster, but he still moved the planet anyway. He honored his contracts. This one had been another standard movement. Inform the indigenous aliens of the coming end of the world. Educate them or give them a way to educate themselves so that they could confirm it on their own. Advise them of the only way to avoid it. Allow them to decide whether to end when their star ends, or start life anew elsewhere. Discuss the risks of moving the world. Get an agreement. Then grow the drive. At any stage of the 1000 orbit procedure they could cancel. At any stage they could develop spaceflight on their own and completely leave the world instead. Of those that didn't want to, or couldn't, he would help them. This planet was one of those. Not yet a Type I civilization, the inhabitants had only just discovered spectroscopy. Enough to know he spoke the truth, not enough to do anything about it, so they had agreed to his help. Everything was going well. Velocity was steady, and he was just waiting for the right moment to fire another volcano for the next adjustment, to move the planet into the correct position for wormhole entry. The bluish star wanted to keep the planet in orbit, of course, and moving it was going to trigger the supernova a bit earlier. Even though Aligvel knew the force required, and had calculated the energy output and the correct trajectory, he still had stages to complete. He hadn't automated everything yet. That would be boring. Beyond orbital velocity, stated the AI. It was what he had been waiting for. He adjusted the M field to control the thrust, pushed his lower tentacles harder, and more lava burst out of the chain of islands in the drive area, like exploding pimples. The planet's velocity increased, and escaped the gravity of the star, heading directly towards the wormhole. But then, a warm feeling began to grow under one of his tentacles. He sent coordinates to the AI. Is there a weather disruption in that area? I'm not receiving any relevant weather data. The AI was silent, processing the information. Suddenly the controls flashed and sparked. Sections glowed, energy levels spiked, and Alikvel felt a tear in his side as a volcano exploded on the other side of the planet. Gaok. The unexpected pain temporarily overwhelmed him, the world suddenly spinning out of control. He was losing sense of where he was, and everything felt upside down. He shuddered and shook, trying to focus. Warning, his AI warned. Destabilized planetary crust. Drive system field losing integrity. Pole shift in progress. Pole shift. Alikvel felt his stomach flip. That was the last thing he needed. He felt the planet's oceans shift and waters rise, engulfing land masses. He tried to control the spiraling field as he felt life forms fall out of the sky and smack into his skin. He'd calculated for every eventuality. There wasn't a pole shift due for at least another eon. But then, the star's own erratic M field might have caused the planet's field to destabilize prematurely. Computer. Do whatever you can to stabilize the M field of the planet. I need to concentrate on getting us to the wormhole. Accepted. Alikvel felt his stomach shift again as the AI increased the frequencies of matter throughout the planet, strengthening smaller fields to influence the main field. The drive had been grown along one end of the planet's M field, lines of nanobots following the currents, spraying out along the surface and digging roots deep into the mantle, like oversized metal shavings. The structure enabled Alikvel to control the speed and course of the planet. If it lost the connection, at this late stage, they would plunge into the star, if they weren't swallowed by its expanding circumference first. Alikvel groaned. It was going to be a disaster. He hadn't had a planet go rogue in a millennium. The pole shift meant that lava propellant was shooting incorrectly, spinning the planet out of control and spiraling it back towards the star. The AI was strengthening the M field again, but it was getting stronger the wrong way around. He could feel the opposite pole currents shifting to his location, striking him like a curtain of hail, or a cloud of meteorites. It was no longer aligned with direction of his drive. Suddenly, volcanoes began firing on the other side of the planet and it began spinning back along its original trajectory. What? Why? The controls weren't responding. He pulled out a tentacle, pain cutting him as the neuron connection separated, and blue blood spurted around the drive room. Ignoring it, he swiped the organic screen. A three-dimensional representation of five-dimensional space and time spun in front of him, confirming his worst fears. The AI had stabilized the field but couldn't reverse it. In a few moments, the planet would be pulled into orbit again, and then it would be too late. Then Alikvel slapped his three eyes with his spurting tentacle. Of course. Why didn't he think of that before? All he had to do was reverse the controls. He shoved his tentacle back into one of the holes and flinched as it grew into the contact again, then he moved his consciousness into the drive system and rerouted field strengths, reversing the polarity. It wouldn't be exactly the same, as the poles had settled slightly differently, but it would be close enough to still work. He waited patiently as the system rebooted and reconnected to the newly realigned energy lines, then he sent a copy of the new configuration to the AI for confirmation. Status: Planetary M field is now stable. The drive engine has aligned to the new configuration. Advise that the drive should fire immediately to avoid falling back into orbital velocity. Alikvel reactivated the drive and magma channels redirected to the correct volcanoes, shooting lava at high speed into space. It was working. They were back on course. Attention! Several coastal cities are now underwater. Estimate death toll of 7 million. Alikvel stared at the console, his beak tight, a tear welled in his center eye. Knowing that he had not been able to save some of them caused him more pain than exploding volcanoes. He took a deep breath as the tear dripped down his ovoid body and splashed loudly on the floor of the drive room. This would not be considered one of his successes. Still, he had to make sure he saved the rest. And, if he felt remorse for too long, there was a chance of feedback into the M field. The AI snapped him out of his reverie. Wormhole remains open at projected coordinates. Aligvel shook himself to clear his mind, then made the final adjustments, activating stores of magma to continue the volcano's lava launches. He adjusted the planet's course, speed, and spin, then plunged it into the wormhole. For a moment they were outside space and time altogether, and then they were on the other side of the galaxy, next to a bright white star, burning through at orbital velocity. This new star would still give the civilization a blue sky, but the main intelligent inhabitants were going to be more susceptible to the stronger radiation. He encouraged them to either move their cities to colder climates or find a way to create more melanin in their skins. The other intelligent race on the planet was just happy they could continue to live in the depths of the oceans, with only a slight increase in the water temperature. Aligvel guided the planet into orbit, stabilized the weather and the M field, then positioned it with the right tilt at the right distance for the vegetation. Once he was sure that the orbit was stable, he carefully and painfully released himself from the drive controls, holding his tentacles up so that his suckers would regenerate quickly. The systems indicated that new cycles of wind channels had begun at the new poles, and previously Greenland was being quickly covered in snow and ice. The drive would remain buried under one of the poles, and it would be eons before anyone found it, if they ever did. By that stage, bacteria would have long ago eaten it away. He preferred the organic systems for that reason. He looked around the little drive room, collected the tiny belongings he had, then rolled to his escape pod and left the planet, heading for the wormhole. He had other worlds to save, but he couldn't hang around. With so many drowned, he wouldn't be able to handle the heartbreak in all three of his hearts. Just as he was about to enter the wormhole, a thought appeared in his head that wasn't his own. The signature was familiar, and immediately filled him with dread. The Galactic Council, otherwise known as the Association of Worlds. What had he done? More to the point, what did they want? The message was a download and it unfolded in his brain like a flower opening. Aligvel scanned the limited information, but became stuck on the request. It was unbelievable. Incredibly unbelievable. The most unbelievable thing he had ever seen. He went into shock just thinking about it. He replayed the message, turning it around in his mind as his pod entered the wormhole and flew back to his mother shell. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. It can't be done. This was beyond even a level 3 civilization. Even he, the saver of worlds, couldn't do it. How could the Galactic Council ever think that he could move an entire galaxy? Hashtag. The skin of the star had already started boiling and expanding across the ecliptic, about to throw off its gaseous clothes in a massive explosion. Aligvel's pod left the wormhole and shot towards his mother shell, course correcting to meet orbital speed, and slid neatly into the underside of the spherical ship. He wished he could have simply parked his mother shell on the planet he had just moved, but the risk of damage was too great. Rolling on board, Aligvel set the jump systems, powered up the energy collectors, and headed out of the system with the star's expanding perimeter not far behind. He decided not to have direct connection to the ship this time. His suckers hadn't completely healed yet, and he didn't want to feel his skin blistering. He pushed hard on the physical controls, and the ship converted the star's wave of energy into additional thrust. The force threw Aligvel back hard into the shell support, almost pancaking him, as his ship left the star system quickly, burning its way to another wormhole nearby. Riding a supernova explosion was one of his little hobbies, but he rarely had the chance to catch the wave. He closed his 3 eyes, enjoying the pleasure of it, as his ship made it to the wormhole. This wave was amazing, giving him more G-force than he'd felt for a long time. He had evolved in very high gravity, and most aliens he'd met couldn't live in his heavy environment, so he'd got used to their lighter one instead. There weren't that many planets out there for him. One orbit, he'd take a holiday and hollow out a black hole to live on the inside of its dense skin for a millennium or two. He settled back into the crush as his ship flew through the wormhole and left the blast wave far behind. Just as he exited and the wormhole closed behind him, the Galactic Council chose that moment to begin tapping into his consciousness again with a live stream. The Gestalt entity was made up of representatives of 63 million intelligent races in this galaxy. While individuals could connect, and be recognized through the conscious soup, the merging of minds was preferred as it simply created a greater mind without conflict. Absolutely all views could be considered in a moment, a decision could be reached in 2, and messages sent within 3. When a decision was difficult, the GC Ubermind considered the potential result for the greater good of the universe, viewed through the filter of unconditional love. Alig Vel thought they weren't showing much unconditional love this time. He still hadn't quite accepted their download, and he knew they needed an answer to their message as soon as possible. With all those minds, they tended to get impatient. Projected time to completely, asked the galactic entity. Questions, he thought back. How do I move over 100 billion stars all at once? And where to? Divert the galaxy closer to the great attractor by 1 degree. Why? This galaxy is on a collision course with another. Prevent it from happening. You have 2 standard galactic orbits. How? Extrapolate from your planet shifting technology. But you will find a way, the Gestalt voice boomed, then faded away. If Alig Vel's race had invented swearing like so many others that he'd saved, he would be doing so right now. As it were, he just heard their answer in his head and went into a slight catatonic state, thoughts whirling in confusion. He'd never moved a galaxy before, and the Ubermind of the Council was basically telling him it would be easy. Well, easy for them. How could he control the trillions of bodies of matter? Where was the thrust going to come from to divert it? Alig Vel squeezed his 3 eyes shut, a headache beginning to spread across his brain. Just 2 cosmic orbits. He'd better get started. Hashtag. Harvested from the edges of multiple star system orbits, Alig Vel had positioned uninhabitable planetoids, with spinning iron cores, along M currents in an equidistant spherical grid around the outer ring of the galaxy. He could tweak the field by changing the planetoids' orbits, increasing or decreasing their mass, or changing the spin rate of the core. But this only had the function of controlling the galactic field. He still hadn't found a solution for how to shift the course of something as massive as the galaxy which was shooting across the universe at a 1,000th the speed of light. He certainly couldn't just create a wormhole and wait several cosmic orbits for all the stars and planets to pass through it. The spherical hologram the size of a gas giant surrounded him, a network of millions of bright pinpricks, linked to remote energy spines through micro-wormholes, spinning to the rotational speed of the galaxy. He had set up his new station inside the central black hole, which he'd hollowed out by opening a wormhole in its center, sending the condensed matter trillions of light years away. He now floated there both serene and stressed, calm and agitated, completing final checks. If any of the lights moved out of alignment in the grid, his AI would make a correction, and the resulting position coordinates would be broadcast to the actual planetoid through microholes, readjusting their positions remotely. Alig Vel would then check the results, making sure the program was adapting to each change correctly. He'd developed this new technology himself, and it had also enabled him to change his planet-saving job. He could now move planets at risk remotely from here too. Even with the help of the AI, it was exhausting to constantly monitor the balance of the fluctuating M fields, time dilation forces and exploding stars, and Alig Vel felt every day that he hadn't regenerated enough. Even so, he looked at the field with pride. No one had done anything like this. He was like a god. At the press of a button he could set plans in motion to move worlds. The sphere of microlights flickered, and Alig Vel looked at it in alarm. Now, just as it was completed, he braced himself for the worst. If something was going to happen to it, he'd have to start again. Another cosmic orbit. Then to his surprise, a humanoid appeared inside his black hole station via spacefold transmission. Female. Sent by the Galactic Council, no doubt. She was in some kind of protective clothing. A helmet covered her head. Vel could detect the creature lived on oxygen and organic energy, and had a very short lifespan. DNA scans indicated she had evolved from a lineage no more than 2 million years old. A baby race. He quickly absorbed all languages and history from her timeline. Homo Galacticus currently inhabited many of the planets in one of the spiral arms of his galaxy. They had a name for it, too. The Milky Way Galaxy. Vel had hoped they would have called it Vel's Galaxy. "Hello," said the creature. "I'm your new assistant." "Another one," replied Vel through the translation system. "I've had millions of assistants, and I'm billions of years old. I'm arrogantly going to assume you are inferior. Surprise me." If the humanoid was offended, she didn't show it. Vel's first test. He was impressed already. She looked around the inside at his hollow black hole, only seeing blackness for millions of kilometers, apart from his planet-sized hologram that surrounded them. "It's bigger than Sol in here. Do you really need all this space?" Vel was still in shock. He had got used to the solitude. "Why are you here?" "I have a solution for moving the galaxy." She put her hands on her hips and waited for his response. Vel's appreciation quickly changed to disbelief. Without realizing it, he began to vent his frustration at his failure on the little human. "I've been working on this problem for longer than your entire race has been in existence, and still the galaxy burns towards the Great Attractor. It'll soon collide with another galaxy, and many civilizations will be destroyed. Yet, even with such loss of life likely to be on my hands, and millions of your years spent on the problem, I have not come up with a solution." "How can you?" The humanoid squinted at him. "I guess it's been a long time since you've been wrong. Billions of years experience, and all that. I've come to shake you up a bit. Rattle your cage, so to speak." The humanoid then showed her teeth. What did some humanoids call it? A smile? A grin? Then the humanoid pressed a button on its suit, an impulse burst from it, and she floated closer to his immense ovoid body. He was at least 5 times bigger than her, but she didn't seem awed or even threatened. "I'll have you know, we humans don't usually put up with people who think they're better than others. Perhaps you're deluded about how important you are because you're older, and think you're more experienced than us. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. It's always what you can do next that matters." Vel was shocked at her directness. He at least had expected some decorum, some respect, some appreciation for his standing from this humanoid. He couldn't believe how rude she was. He was outraged. "I'm outraged." Vel snapped, his body wobbling, tentacles flicking about agitatedly. "How dare you speak to me like that? I, who have saved so many planets in this galaxy that millions of races are going to carve a statue of me out of dark matter." He had been quite pleased when he had heard about that. He would position it above one of the poles of the black hole. The humanoid laughed, ignoring his bluster. "Yes. We know. We're contributing to that too. But there's one more thing you've got to do. Stop this galaxy from hitting another one." Then she looked at him sideways. "I wonder how you're going to do that." Vel was silent, staring at the creature. Its words were like a sharp object, twisting deep inside him. He had been complacent, expecting the idea to just come. But, it hadn't. Civilizations were going to die if he couldn't do it. But, what was he going to do? Did she really have the answer? Then the human floated closer and whispered, Vel's translation systems transmitting her understanding too. "We know how much you care. Sometimes you care too much. We know why you can't work it out, after millions of years, my dear Vel. My compassionate god alien. The solution involves something you could never entertain, but something we humans have even used for entertainment. Death. Aligvel flinched. He didn't like the word. It made his beak taste like ash. But, he knew in his three hearts that she was right. He could never consider death as part of a solution. There was always a way to keep on going. Always. Helping people to live was his passion, his driving force. He couldn't deny it. He couldn't deliberately cause death. He had been trying to access the solution with life, not realizing the key was death. Like decrypting an algorithm, the answer quickly fanned out in his mind, and the pieces all fell together perfectly. It was horrible in its simpleness. Simple in its horribleness. He saw the solution in front of him and he opened his beak in surprise. The human understood, and she clapped her gloved hands together excitedly. You worked it out. Your worlds, said Aligvel in surprise and shock. Yes. Your stars, that whole edge of one of the arms of the galaxy. 100,000 inhabited planets. Perfectly positioned. Blow up the edge stars, convert the planets to energy, and the galaxy's torus would change. The explosions would divert the course of the galaxy by about 1 degree. A tear came to Aligvel's middle eye and he wiped it away with a tentacle. Your race lives along that edge. All of you would die. The human pulsed closer to move further up the side of Aligvel's face and look him in his three eyes. I'm here to authorize you. I'm here to offer my race to save galaxies. It's what we do. 63 million alien races out there, and every individual knows when they're going to die, and none of them die without knowing the reason. Humans have no idea when we will die, and so we can willingly risk dying for any reason we like. It's one of our strengths, our driving force. Aligvel felt more tears, but this time let them drop. He had nothing to say. The female tenderly put her glove on Aligvel's side. We have made a decision for the greater good of the universe as a whole. If our galaxy continues on its current trajectory, it will collide with the Andromeda Galaxy, destroying billions of civilizations. To make it easier for you, I have also been authorized to merge my consciousness, use my blood, press a button, swipe a console, or whatever is needed to begin. I'm here to assist you until I can't assist anymore. If it takes my entire life, that is fine, though I would expect some breaks to visit my family, and maybe grow some roses. Then the human smiled again. A sad smile, but one not of resignation but of beauty. A rare smile when a life is knowingly given with love for the greater good. The Galactic Council tells us you've only got 1,000,000 years left. We don't have much time. When do we start? Aligvel looked at this tiny human and realized how much bigger she was compared to him. Your wish is my command, he said, humbly. Hashtag. Independent drives were fashioned in space by Aligvel's bots. Using wormholes, solar winds, and M fields, they attached themselves to the least inhabited areas of celestial bodies, their masses so large that it was less a landing and more of a docking. Some, fitted with field generators, able to withstand millions of degrees of heat, were sent to the hearts of stars to await activation. Others were sent into the cores of gas giants, ready to set off the chain reaction to turn the planet into a star, and then turn that star into a supernova. The net of planetoids continued to muster the ring of stars around the galaxy, using dynamo force to maintain equilibrium and magnetic reconnect ions, and remove angular momentum so that stars continued to form, planets continued to evolve, and the galaxy continued to behave as a galaxy should. The planetoids surrounding the blast arm had been rebuilt to enable a flow of the energy through the field, creating an energy wave that would push the galaxy as one, the propellant energy funneled through micro holes. A tiny push that would, over time, steer the collection of stars evenly. It would be a slight turn, and it would take one galactic orbit to perform, but then the path would be true and they would miss the Andromeda Galaxy by 1,000,000,000 light years. When the entire arm was fitted out and ready to blow, Aligvel called in the descendant of his first human assistant. A tall thin male human, in a skin-tight suit, glowing slightly. Aligvel had filled the hollowed-out black hole with oxygen, but it was no longer needed. The human was at the very edge of becoming semi-physical. They had evolved quickly. "Are you ready?" Aligvel asked. "It's been 1,000 years for us," the human said, solemnly. "Many of us have already moved on to a higher level of existence. Many more have already taken ships through wormholes and escaped to other parts of the galaxy. But most have decided simply to pass when their worlds pass, hanging stubbornly onto fourth-dimensional existence. How many will perish in the Death for Life project? No more than 100 trillion. The man looked sad. But we understand the eternity of existence. They will simply awake in the real world. This world is just a dream to us now. But then, the dream identity they individually created would be gone forever," said Aligvel. "They can only ever be that life once. It is sad that these fleeting perceptions will disappear. Do you have a solution for them?" Aligvel looked downcast. "Your ancestor came to me and we discussed the death. Destroying the worlds to create the mass to propel the galaxy, there was no other way to save the future." "So be it," said the male. "All are agreed. Please show me the control to start the process so that I would be the one responsible, and not you, respected Aligvel." Hashtag. Wormholes opened in millions of places throughout the edge of the human-colonized arm of the galaxy. Activation signals were sent to the waiting planet drives, the dormant star stations and the gas giant converters. Drives fired up, linking to M fields and internal planetary and star processes, ready to convert matter to energy. Aligvel's hologram of lights continued to maintain the galactic spin, keep the stars, planets, and other bodies in their orbits, and through microhole communication, got ready to relay information the moment the stars began their explosions. But he knew, even when the reports began, that many of the worlds around those exploding stars would not see or feel the death for a short while yet. There was time for them to say their goodbyes. The stars would be the first to go then as the circumference of the star reached a planet, that would blow. As it reached a gas giant, that would convert, until there would be one massive heat cloud, pushing the galaxy in a new direction. It would all happen in an ever-expanding wave until the waves would reach the worlds in. Then he stopped. The wave. Now that he no longer had to think about the death project, it was like another light had turned on. Life had returned to his thoughts. And life was lighting the way to another solution. The wave. He could use it. He could save them. Well, some of them. It was much better than none. He looked at the male human floating near him, and the male was grinning. "You worked it out," he said. Aligvel was almost about to wobble with joy, but then realized that the human had known all along. Again. Exasperated, laughing, and crying, he looked down on the little human and pretended to be angry. "Oh, no. Not you too. I thought I'd learned all my lessons in life already." He floated over to his interface, and plunged his tentacles into the direct metallic connection to the AI, sending a message. "Update all planet drives. Redivert enough magma to under the planetary crust of the populated areas. Surround land masses in strong M fields to hold the atmosphere. Jettison land masses in the direction of the microholes. Expand microholes to encompass land masses. Utilize onrushing energy wave to increase velocity of the land masses and direct the matter into the wormholes. Once the masses are through, close the holes." Accepted. The AI sent the commands through the wormholes, all positioned a very short distance from the populated planets. Energy conversion systems engaged on inhabited worlds, magma chambers under land masses filled, and planets got ready to ride the supernova waves? As simple as that, asked the male. Well, not quite. All those microholes lead here. It's going to get very crowded, very quickly. Hashtag. The stars exploded, expanded, matter blasting out at 1/10 of the speed of light, energy of massive brightness that, in millions of years' time would be seen by other galaxies. Planets blew apart as land masses rocketed into space on curved trajectories, vanishing instantly into wormholes that snapped shut behind them. Gas giants turned into stars and supernovas, a chain reaction with no chain, little fireworks from billions of kilometers away, massive destruction up close. And the wave grew and rolled and spread, encompassing the starscape, shifting its course, creating a new field, a new galaxy, as the stars shifted and began their slow restabilization in the spinning 3.5-armed mass. Signals were relayed back instantly to Oligvel's black hole, and he watched in awe as the arm of the galaxy began to light up with such fire, such power. M-fields redirected all explosions towards one point, the resulting energy pushing back towards the rest of the galaxy, shifting it in waves through time. The first through quantum entanglement, the second through micro-wormholes, the third through time dilation warping, and the fourth at the speed of light. The ripples would continue for 100,000 light-years, bouncing back and forth across the galaxy like the effect of a rock thrown into a weightless ball of water. In the center of the hollow black hole, Oligvel watched as the space was ripped apart with millions of open wormholes. Moments later, countries spilled out, spinning and turning, burning across the space. Water splashing the surface of bubble fields erected around atmospheres, people floating, buildings breaking. Many would have died in the launch, many more in the arrival, and then falling structures within their environment would kill even more. But so many more would survive. And for that, Oligvel was happy. The systems went to work, stabilizing the turning pieces of worlds, positioning them not far from each other on the inside surface. Most needed oxygen, and it was good Oligvel had decided to fill the inside of his black hole with some. Still, each world had its own pressure and gravity, and he quickly made sure that that was stable too. The only thing they didn't have yet was light, but he quickly created a spinning torus of plasma in the center, bright enough to light the entire interior. His new assistant had been watching the rescue with some fascination. "What next?" "That's up to you," said Oligvel, smiling happily for the first time in millions of years. "The system is now yours. This entire galaxy is now yours. Take good care of it for me. I put a lot of work into it." The human was surprised. "But, well, your race always knows the answers. I'm sure you'll be able to work it out. If in doubt, ask the AI. You can use the wormholes to travel the galaxy from here, find new places for your kind to live. Or you can stay here. There's enough oxygen for another millennium. I'll leave you to it. It's time I took a holiday." And with that, Oligvel transferred all authority of the hollowed-out black hole central control console to the human male, jumped into his mother shell, and headed out into space via one of the wormholes. He only had 1,000,000 years left. It was time to retire. Maybe he could grow some, what was it that female had taught him about? Roses. Yes, a garden, and some roses. He wondered how many gardens he could plant in 1,000,000 years. Then again, he'd never been to the Andromeda Galaxy. He'd spent a lot of his life saving it, it was only right that he went to visit. He set course out of the Milky Way, headed to the next wormhole, and on to the next galaxy.